Hi, welcome to What the Flick. Christy, the exciting debut of Scott Mantz from Access Hollywood, good friend of ours who's here for the first time. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I love What the Flick.
Yeah, see, people like our show.
Yes.
And the triumphant return of Tim Gerson, longtime friend of the show, been here a while, multiple jobs. What's your job today? Who are you today?
I'm a senior U.S. critic for Screen International.
We'll take that. That's a good one. So it's a really good week. It's a holiday week. We're talking about The Good Dinosaur first. Scott Mantz will describe to you what The Good Dinosaur is about.
The Good Dinosaur is the 16th computer animation feature from Disney Pixar. This is coming out the same year as Inside Out. How great to have two Pixar movies in the same year. One of them is better than the other. We'll get to that in a second. Now, The Good Dinosaur basically goes with the notion that what if that asteroid that crashed into the Earth, wiped away the dinosaurs 65 million years ago, just sort of did a flyby. The dinosaurs were still around. That's what we're going with here. The movie basically follows the journey of Arlo, a baby dinosaur who's separated from his family and is making a journey home. Along the way, he befriends a young boy, human. Yes, dinosaurs and humans occupy the same space in this alternate reality that he nicknames Spot. It is a coming-of-age movie. It is an epic journey. The computer animation is breathtaking. And basically, that's the premise.
Toss to the trailer. Take a look.
We need to get home.
I got a job for you. Keep on the dodge and sidle up the loblolly past them hornheads.
What?
That creature protected you. What is his name?
I don't know.
I name him, I keep him. Killer.
Stinky!
Violet.
Spike!
Lunatic!
Spot! Spot! Come here, Spot, come here! Well, ain't you just the cutest thing? I'm done being scared.
If you ain't scared, you ain't alive.
Yeah, so this is so breathtakingly beautiful, so photorealistic in a way I think we've not seen in any animated film. I actually thought, and maybe I'm wrong, it looks like they actually shot live action stuff and then just put animated dinosaurs into it. But it is all
It's
CGI,
all computer
right?
animated, yep.
Like the water, like there are lens flares, like everything looks so much more tactile than anything we've ever seen before. How did they do this?
Well, it's funny because there are a few different times while watching the movie, and I know it's in 3D. I didn't see it.
I saw it in 2D.
Yeah, I saw it in 2D as well. And I kept staring at it going, no, I know this is animation, but it feels so incredibly real. And, you know, for me, I just have to say that I think when people praise Pixar movies, rightly so, one of the things they always say is like, well, they're not just for kids, they're for adults, you know. And I think what's interesting about The Good Dinosaur is I feel like this is the first Pixar movie that is more for kids, and not necessarily in a bad way. I think that this movie is done, I don't want to say simplistically, but it's very much done for, I would say, 8, 9, 10-year-olds. And you sort of see almost like this homeward bound, incredible journey sort of kind of narrative going on between this dinosaur and this feral kid, essentially, trying to make it there, you know, kind of make it back home. And I think it's in terms of the storytelling, it's not as sophisticated as some of the other, like the great Pixar movies like Toy Story or Inside Out, but it's so beautifully done. It looks so wonderful. It's one of the quieter movies for Pixar, which is funny for me because, you know, I think like a lot of people, one of the reasons why I like Pixar so much is that their scripts are so funny. The characters are so sharply drawn. And this one, you really appreciate the silence and you really sort of notice the environment as they're kind of walking through what's essentially supposed to be like the Pacific Northwest in the United States. And it's so lush and lovely. And there's something almost kind of primal about this kind of like boy going home story. It's like a lot of Disney movies where the kid loses his dad early on. He has this kind of like this psychic wound that he's trying to heal in a certain way.
It's very old-fashioned in the
It is
Bambi
old-fashioned.
Dumbo tradition
Yeah.
of like really perilous shit goes down.
Yeah.
Like for a kid to survive on his own, like losing a parent, being, you know, far away from home, being lost, not knowing where anybody is, having to survive treacherous stuff in nature. Like it reminded me of the really scary stuff that happens in a lot of old Disney movies. I don't know that we've seen that so much in a lot of the Pixar films.
No, you're right. We definitely haven't. And the other thing about The Good Dinosaur is this movie was supposed to come out in the summer of 2014. It got pushed back. And with that happens, you know, there's a lot of bad buzz surrounding a film. So I feel like The Good Dinosaur actually turned out to be pretty good.
Yeah.
Also, to follow Inside Out, which is
Right.
such a trippy film, a brilliant movie that's really more for grown-ups. There is some serious heavy stuff going on in Inside Out.
Yeah.
So like you said, you know, Good Dinosaur, it's more simple, it's more straightforward. The story is very easy. There are a lot of quieter moments, and as a result, I felt like The Good Dinosaur started off a little slow, but it got better as it went along. And I thought it was a beautiful film. There were some really deep moments.
Yeah.
There were some exciting moments, too. And again, the animation is absolutely superb and spectacular. And I feel like if Inside Out had not come out this year and it was just about The Good Dinosaur, I would have loved it a lot more, but I still loved it a lot. I think it's a lot better than like Monsters University or Cars 2, which just
yeah.
preceded Inside Out
Yeah.
and were very subpar Pixar
Yeah.
movies. This, like Inside Out, is a return to form. And again, how great to have two really
Yeah.
good Pixar movies the same year.
Yeah, but speaking of Monsters University, the actor who did the voice of Squishy in that, Peter Sohn, if it's Son, I'm sorry. We think your last name is Sohn. We like your movie a lot. He did the voice of Squishy. He directed this as his, like, I think it's his directing
This
debut.
is
It's his feature debut.
yeah.
His feature debut.
And like, how assured is it? It's because it's enormous, but it's intimate. As we say, it's beautiful. So yeah, so he's been a long time voice actor and animator. This is his feature debut. Yeah, I found it very emotional, and I brought my
Yeah.
son with me. As you guys may be aware, I have a 6-year-old child. I never talk about him on the show. And he was sitting in my lap, and there was one scene, and I don't want to give away all the stuff about it, but there's a scene involving sticks in the dirt. And I was just sobbing. And he's sitting in my lap. He whips around. He goes, "Are you crying?" I'm like, "No." But then later on, there's a moment where he got curled up into my lap and he was crying. Like, so it's very emotional on a very primal level.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think one of the things that works for this movie is because the story is very simple in a certain way. There's almost something that feels mythic. And so when I can't say that anything happens in the movie in terms of where it kind of ends up going that surprised me.
No.
But there's something that's deeply, almost inevitably satisfying about the journey it kind of goes on. And that stick
my
scene that you're
God.
talking about, I kind of knew that was coming, but it didn't matter. And I think that a movie like this is so easy to do badly because it's, because it is so simple that it could seem very just predictable. And these characters, I think it's important to say, are not incredibly nuanced or even deeply, or really even like that deeply interesting of characters, but there's something about like that essentially this movie is a boy and his dog story.
Basically,
With a twist.
So the boy is a dinosaur and the dog is a human. But where it goes and the fact that it kind of plays into this sort of like this almost like a folklore or like a fable kind of quality
feels
to
like
it.
a Western in some
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah, it's got like a Western quality to it. And I think a lot of people may kind of underrate this movie because it's not as exciting as, say, like The Incredibles or like even like WALL-E. It doesn't have that type of like formal ambition. But I think people I think like you were saying, Scott, if people are patient with it and kind of give it some time, it really starts to kind of like sink its teeth very, very slowly. And I was like you, Chrissy, at the end, I found it to be kind of shockingly emotional.
Yeah.
Even though I sort of knew where it was going.
You know where it's going, but when it comes.
It hits you, yeah.
But you see, I didn't know where it was going.
No?
I expected it to end a certain way, and no spoilers here,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I expected it to end a certain way, and it didn't.
Okay.
And because it didn't, it got me right here.
Okay, yeah.
And, there's another moment towards the end of the film, I'm not going to say what it is, but when it happens, there's so many moments that has really, really got to me. And because, like we all talked about, the sort of simplicity and the deeper moments, I mean, it is a little dark at times.
Totally.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It is
Yeah.
a little dark
Scary.
at
Scary
times.
stuff happens.
Now, I don't know about you guys. Do you take notes when you are watching a movie?
I almost never. I have
Not
to say.
anymore.
I do.
No,
I
for
do.
me, it's more like my instinct of how am I different once I've walked out.
See, I always take notes
Okay.
because I always like to follow the progression of a film because in this case, I wrote at the top of the page, starts off slow.
Okay.
But then by the end of the page, you could see that I clearly love the film.
Right.
It grew on me. And I think this movie does require a little bit of patience.
Yeah.
It's not as like whiz-bang as like Toy Story or The Incredibles or even Inside Out, which is just, there's so much packed into that 90-minute movie. But this one is a slow burn. You get swept up in it. and it stays with you after you leave the theater. And I think out of the 16 Pixar movies, there's nothing else like it.
Yeah, I would say
That's true.
Yeah, for me, I would say that
visually at least.
Yeah, definitely.
and I think that's the important thing that I also want to talk about that Scott mentioned, which is that even though I think this movie is geared more to like kids, it doesn't treat them like kids. The movie does have a lot of tough stuff, and I don't think for anybody who's watching at home, I don't think there's anything that I would say don't bring your kid to. It's too intense.
yeah.
But I think the movie does deal with mortality and growing up and the fact that the world does have scary things about it. I mean, not really since I think the opening of Finding Nemo as a Pixar movie had.
That's so scary too.
Or
isn't it?
even like certain parts of like Toy Story 3 when everybody thinks they're all gonna die. But in terms of but I think like Finding Nemo, like that opening, that's like the first time since then the Pixar movie has so kind of bluntly said, hey, the adult outside world is a scary place and there are things to be worried about. And so I think that in terms of going back to the slowness at the beginning, I think the movie starts off by being a little too kid-friendly in the way it kind of treats its kids. It's a little
Absolutely
too
agree.
cute
Yeah.
and a little too adorable. But I feel like it almost sort of like establishes that so that then they can say, okay, now we're going to make it a little darker
Right.
and a little
lulls
scary.
you in.
You
That's when
feel a
it
little
becomes-
safer kind of going into it, being like, okay, and then it kind of like softens you up for things that happen along the way.
Well, it's because it turns into a journey and it becomes a coming-of-age movie about a dinosaur. And between The Good Dinosaur and Jurassic World,
Oh my God.
I would rather watch The Good Dinosaur.
Yeah,
any
me
day,
too.
any
Me
day,
too.
yeah.
Actually, we should mention really fast. It's a great voice cast, but not in a look at me kind of distracting way.
Yeah.
The father and mother dinosaurs are Jeffrey Wright and Frances McDormand. A T-Rex who comes later on, voiced beautifully by Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott.
Oh my
Yes.
God. And him, you know it's him immediately. But I think a lot of them, you don't really know who it is that they're doing the voices. And
Yeah.
quite often with a lot of these films, not Pixar ones, but a lot of the early DreamWorks ones, it's like, oh, look, it's Will Smith or whatever
Yeah,
it is.
totally.
Here, the voice cast is really lovely. So what are your numbers then, gentlemen? I'm giving it an 8.2.
Go first.
I give it a 7.5.
Okay.
I'm going with a 7.5 as well.
I'm saying 8.2 because I am much sappier than these two fellows here, clearly. And so our average is 7.7. It's at 85% on the tomato meter. That's what Matt Atchity would tell you if he were here. So it's a good, solid holiday weekend family film.
It's wonderful.
Bye.